So we've gathered here today representing 10 organisations and a collective reach and representation of over 46,000 people in Geelong. So we'd now like to invite Deputy Prime Minister to the stage to address some questions, which we have provided to his office well before the forum, so we expect some great answers. And we will ask each question and seek clarification on his response. And you even have your own microphone. Thank you for coming out to the north and being with us tonight and responding to our stories here. Our questions are on the screen and on your agenda, so you can also follow along. Number one, what vision and commitment do you have for working with and strengthening civil society in Geelong to find tangible solutions to the housing, work and cost of living crisis to create a fairer future for our kids?
As this is my first contribution, let me start by acknowledging the Wadawurrung people and pay my respects to elders past and present. It is, and let me also just say up front, I'm so sorry that this date had to change, and I really appreciate the comments that you've made about my mother, who was obviously an inspiration in my life, left her mark on this town, but she was a remarkable woman, and we miss her a great deal. But perhaps the starting point is really just to respond to my engagement with the real deal, which I think is the answer to question A. It's genuinely inspiring for me to be in front of this audience today. I really mean that. I mean that in the sense that I have dealt with a number of the bodies who got up here earlier who do such incredible work within the community. Unions, Cloverdale Community Centre, Norlane Community Centre, Rosewall. I'm not sure Rosewall was part of it, but I dealt with Rosewall, and indeed all the community centres around Geelong. I think in my journey as the member for Corio, and prior to that really, as working in the trade union movement, and I've said this often, I think one of the single biggest challenge I've come across in terms of public policy, and I never know how quite to express it, but it is very much what you are talking about here today, and that is how to tackle the question of poverty, of disenfranchisement, particularly in urban communities around Australia. Norlane, Corio, Newcombe, Winnington are examples of it. They're not the only examples. But whereas we can see things happening, the truth is, and I wish it were different, the situation is trending in the wrong direction. And it's in that context that I find this meeting really inspiring, because what this really represents is the community coming together, all of those groups coming together to maximise your voice, but to, in the manner that was described earlier, actually start thinking through what solutions might be there to genuinely move the needle, to change the dial in these communities. And where you're coming from, in terms of the comments that people made earlier, affordable housing, just transition in respect of climate change, rights of working people, all of those are completely central to what I've been about in terms of my public life. They are very much central to what our government is about. So I think the most important thing for me to say up front, and we can get into the specifics about housing and climate change and the like, is an absolute commitment to work with Real Deal. And this is tonight, like I know what it is to have this group meeting, this number of people here tonight. This is not a small achievement to have everyone come out and to have the stories that are being told and to have people here listening. As I see it, this is the well, it's not the beginning because we had a beginning a few months ago, but this is part of an ongoing process. This is not the end. It's not about just coming out and doing a meeting. It is very much about working with you all on an ongoing basis. And finally, I guess I say this, I'm probably rabbiting on. There are, I mean, the way our system works is that we find ourselves doing two jobs as the Deputy Prime Minister on the one hand, but the member for Corio on the other. In respect of that, the most important of those jobs for me is being the member for Corio. That's where it starts. And whatever else, I'm the representative of this community. And at one level, the simplest answer to the questions, a number of the questions that are posed to me tonight, is I think it's my job to amplify your voice. And I'm there to do that. Like, I really am there to do that.
Woo! You're making my job easy, Richard.
And there are, this is not going to be a shock to you either. Government is hard. If solutions were easy, they would be out there. And a lot of these issues need to be worked through, but it does matter that voices are heard. And part of my role, I think, is to enable the community's voice to be heard. And I can't see a better example of doing that than to amplify the voice of the real deal.
Thank you so much, Richard. So I'm hearing that you're going to support the real deal, and we really look forward to getting some great answers then. Lots of positive ones, right? Okay, so will you be an advocate to the Federal Housing Minister Claire O'Neill to seek an audit of vacant federal government land to be used for social housing, and by when?
So yes, very happy to do that. And here. I'm happy to be an advocate to Claire next week. Next week is fair to say. That's when I'll next see her. We are looking at available Commonwealth land in terms of social housing. I think to just very quickly, and I've only got 2 minutes, and politicians are the worst people to keep the time frame, such as what's on the screen. I am really proud to be a part of a government that has at the heart of its agenda housing. I'm far from claiming expertise in this area of policy, but what I do know is that we have a Prime Minister in Anthony Albanese who grew up in public housing, who credits it with his life, actually, and who has been utterly committed from the first day of our government to seeing housing a central feature of what this government's about relative to really any Commonwealth government previously. It is, housing sits across all three tiers of government. And so the levers that are available to any tier, they're distributed, which makes it awkward. But we want to play big and in this space. And I think that, and I'm not here saying we've got all the answers, but I am here saying, I'm part of a government which has real intent in this space. In the specific of Commonwealth land, firstly, we need more housing stock in Australia, but a focus in terms of getting that housing stock is getting social and affordable housing. In doing the Housing Australia Future Fund, which is the $10 billion fund, social housing is a critical component of that. Where we can find it, we want to put it out there, and the most obvious place in terms of Commonwealth government being able to do that is Commonwealth land. So really happy to pursue that audit locally.
Fantastic. So that's a big yes, I would assume. Thank you so much for that, Richard. And so we'll be getting in contact with you in a couple of weeks to find out how you got on with Claire.
Yeah, no worries.
Excellent.
We'll get Claire down.
Claire, yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, why don't
There's another commitment there, guys.
We genuinely should do that.
We should, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I'm really happy to do that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so would you write to the state government counterparts, Minister Shing, Brooks and Vic Treasurer Tim Palley, to encourage the implementation of a ground lease model on vacant state government land in Geelong and set up a meeting with you and Real Deal with the Federal Housing Minister Claire O'Neill to discuss both the audit of Commonwealth land and ground lease model?
Yeah. So again, happy to do that. The ground lease model, the the presentation you saw earlier, the slide presentation, has been done by Homes Victoria. And so this is something the Victorian government is looking at. It's their initiative. I understand there are a couple of pilots which have occurred in Melbourne. And so I think trying to get more of that happening here is something that, you know, I'm very keen to, very happy to advocate for. We are working with all the states in around the Commonwealth, but with the Victorian government in relation to how we can do anything really to promote social housing, and the ground lease model is an example of that. As I said earlier, we should get Claire here, absolutely. But I think, I mean, really, getting that, what would matter in terms of that meeting is to get one of the state folk along as well. So absolutely. Why don't we try and do that? Absolutely.
Okay. And could we have a time frame when you think this would be possible? Because we'd like to keep contact with you.
I'm reluctant to do that just because, this is a deeply unsatisfactory answer. I will do it as soon as I can, but you will...
ASAP. So we will ring you tomorrow.
Sure.
Maybe we'll give you the afternoon.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay. So again, a big yes. So big round of applause. Thank you, Richard. Okay. Will you write to the state government counterparts, Planning Minister Kilkenny and Treasurer Palley to encourage them to... Oh, hang on, I already did that one.
Mandatory inclusionary zoning. Yeah.
And encourage them to implement mandatory inclusion zoning for all social housing across all new housing developments across all of our cities. Yeah.
So again, in terms of mandatory inclusionary zoning, if I'm being honest, I'm not the full bottle on the... I mean, it feels like that is a term of art, and there's probably a whole lot that people attach to that phrase. Looking at ways in which we can be working with state governments, the Victorian government in this instance, to see that zoning laws, planning laws, framed in such a way as to encourage the development of more social housing, and that includes the private sector investment in more social housing in the context of developments, is certainly something that we're keen to do, and certainly something that I'm keen to help support. Perhaps that's the way in which I answer that question, which might be slightly broader than talking about the specifics of the mandatory inclusionary zoning as an idea. But, you know, it may well be a subset of trying to think about how we can work with state governments to have zoning and planning policies which do promote much greater private investment in social housing. And again, really, I mean, maybe in terms of getting the meeting together in relation to the paragraph C, we can have that conversation in relation to paragraph D as well.
I mean, and we thank you for that too. But I think that for the community, having a mandatory inclusionary zoning is something real and something that is a concrete thing for us to move forward with and have some security around, even in private investment, that there is that component there. Sure. So it's very close to our heart. So yeah, thank you for supporting that, and for all of your wonderful answers and for sharing them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richie.